This will probably be a bit crooked, so first off, I apologize for that. I was inspired to do this video today because, I don't know, it's just something that's been on my mind for like fucking 2 months because of what I've been doing. So here goes. If you don't follow my stuff, hi, hello, welcome. Hope you like. If you do, you know that I've been writing a fantasy novel since November of last year. Quick timeline: I finished the first draft January. I think the second week of January. I started beginning of November, finished halfway through January. Took a month off of the book. Did the first edit March, April. Sent it to beta readers. Started working on it again in August, and then till now. I want to talk about how messy writing a book is, how difficult it is after you've already done the first draft. Because I have a bad habit of, instead of doing my daily writing, watching stuff about writing or reading stuff about writing. And a lot of people talk about the first draft, writing the first draft. And then editing is kind of glossed over. And I'm not doing this video because I think I know things and that I'm in a position where I'm ready to teach people. I'm just trying to document what I'm doing so that, the hope is in 5 years when I'm a bestseller, I can look back at this and say, oh, I was hardworking back then. I didn't know shit, but I was hardworking. So I think that's the mindset I'm coming from. So let's start with this. Why is it so messy? It starts with expectation. I wrote the first draft very quickly. It was 118,000 words. The longest thing I've ever written. I've never tried writing a novel before, and I wrote in 2.5 months. That felt fast to me, and I was really proud of myself. I was like, I'm a fast writer. I can write fast. I'm gonna be the next Stephen King. While I'm taking my month off, I'm writing short stories, whatever, and I'm proud of myself the whole time. And then I start editing. So I first started by reading the whole book. I mean, obviously, if you want to get an impression of what your novel's going to be like for readers, you read the book. And that was rough. If you're ever in a place where you think you might be a narcissist and you want to knock yourself down a couple pegs, write a novel and then read it. That was rough. I had a lot of moments, a lot of days where I thought, I'm not really a writer, I'm just playing at being a writer. This stuff is crap, everything I write is crap, and it's never going to be any good. Yeah, I get those still now, when I'm trying to edit something, it's not going well, I try to write something and it's crap. Maybe there's a bit of an irony where you're not actually a writer unless you think you're not a writer, at least some of the time. But anyway, I digress. I read through it and I got into the second draft right away. I wanted to sort of ride that feeling and use it to motivate myself. And at that point, I still thought, 2.5 months to write. Editing should take like a month, and then it'll be done, and it'll be ready, and I'll send it out. I'll have an agent, make a bunch of money. That is not what happened. I finished my second draft. I thought it was a lot better. I thought I did really, really well. So I sent it off to a few friends of mine. Now, this wasn't unprompted. While I was writing, especially working on the first draft, people around me kept saying, oh, you're writing a book. That's so cool. When do I get to read it? When's it going to be out? Have you thought about publishing? Where are you going to publish it now? People were like really excited, which I wasn't expecting. I kind of downplayed it a lot. And then I sent my book off to a bunch of those people. And none of them really read it. That was a hard hit. And I'm not putting anybody on blast. That's not my intention. I built certain expectations because of what people said. That's not something I should have done. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been disappointed. Pure and simple. But I built up expectations for myself, and I thought people are going to read through it and they're going to be amazed. And then I think 5 people read the first chapter, 2 people read the second. I had one person who told me that the first chapter was unreadable. I appreciated that feedback because there was that. Another person pointed out some things that were very confusing to them, and I was able to fix some of those later. So I appreciated that feedback too. But for the most part, people just didn't read it and didn't get back to me about it, didn't tell me anything. So I took the hit right in the nose. And I left it alone for a long time, just hoping that people would get back to me. Now, mind you, I reached out to some of them at first, and when that didn't really lead anywhere, then I kind of gave up. So it wasn't until August that I picked the book back up again and started diving back into the edit and working on the third draft. And I'm still on the third draft, and I'll tell you why. I read the book again and realized that amongst other things, other details that needed to change, my third act was weak. And not weak as in, why am I reading this? And that sucked when I came to that realization. I realized I'm going to have to write the third draft all over again. And that's just part of the job. You want to write a good book, if something doesn't work, you got to rewrite it. You got to toss it out. And if you have to toss out 6 chapters because they don't work, well, guess what? You got to write 6 chapters to replace those. And then you got to edit those. So I rewrote the third act. Then I reread the third act. And it was still kind of weak. It was better in some places, but in others didn't work as well. And I wasn't really sure what to do with it. And then I had an epiphany. I was reading the Short Story Writing Handbook. It's basically a series of essays about writing short stories. And in one of them that I was reading, I read essentially something that said I had 3 characters in the story, and by the end of the story I'd forgotten to include the third one. And so that author nixed that character, and the story was much better as a result. And that I realized I have to kill a character. And I knew exactly who it was. And I sat there in my bathroom, because I was in the bathroom while reading this. And I sat there for what felt like 15 minutes. In actuality, it was probably more like 1, but it felt like a long time. And I'm just staring off into space going, what happens if I kill this character? And that character wasn't really doing much of anything in the third act, so I rewrote the third act again. I'm still rewriting it. You know, still working on it. And it's October. That was a hard realization when I learned that it's not as quick as you think it is. Stephen King is one of my big idols in the way he writes. I don't read as much of his stuff. I mostly listen to him talk. I've read On Writing, and kind of like night and day. Like the day I finished that book, I immediately started writing like a different person. It was great. And I listen to him talk. I listen to his talks, and he's a writer I really want to emulate. I don't want to be the kind of author that writes 3 books in his whole career. No matter how successful those are, I always want to keep working. I enjoy this work, you know. It's the first thing I do in the morning, and it's one of the last things I do at night. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Days where I struggle writing are eons better than days where I struggle at anything else. Anyway, the point being, I rewrote the third act. I'm in the process of rewriting the third act for the second time. And we're at almost a year since I started writing this. It's taken more than twice as long as what I expected. And the reason why is because I had very unrealistic expectations going into the editing portion. Now, I didn't think that my first draft was a diamond in the rough gift from the gods, but I still thought, I had something great to work with. And I don't think I did. My premise is really good. My characters are interesting. But nothing, like, a lot of things didn't work, and a lot of things need to be rewritten. I don't want to go on and on about this forever. My main point, my main premise in this video is don't underestimate the editing process. Especially when, like me, you're going for traditional publishing. I know self-publishing is all the rage right now because you can cut out the middleman, you can go direct to reader, and a lot of people have been very successful with that, and more power to them. But I want to pursue traditional publishing. I want my book in bookstores, I want to do signings, eventually the goal is to be a bestseller and to have at least one of my books grow into an empire, like movies, toys, shows, whatever. Like, it's a pipe dream, but it's still a dream, One of my bucket list items is to not rest until there's an action figure of me made. It's a very weird goal, but I think it's from being involved in wrestling where all these guys and gals have action figures of themselves, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to be immortalized in plastic? Anyway, editing. It's a mess. It can be a bit of a slog. Some people love it, but it's a lot of work. It's messy. A book is a lot more than its first draft. And if you want to get published, and if you don't initially work with an editor because you want to be traditionally published and you're going directly to an agent, you better clean your shit up. If you want to get out of the slush pile, if I want to get out of the slush pile, this is me talking to me now, I need to do what everyone else is doing and then step it up a notch. I need to be the hardest worker in the room. Because I want to be a great writer. I want to be one of the best writers of all time. That doesn't happen overnight. That doesn't happen if you turn in a half-finished first draft, or half-finished second draft, or half-finished third draft. I'm going to need to put everything I have into this book. And accept that it might not even work out. And that if it doesn't, the best thing I can do is move on to the next one. I think that's where I'm going to leave it off. I'm cautiously optimistic, cynically hopeful. But at the end of the day, there's really nothing else I'd rather be doing. So if you're in the same slog I am, just before NaNoWriMo, keep working at it, because no one else is going to do it for you. And I hope it turns out the way you want.